How many here have had a great day? Seriously, great day. I'm not talking about today, but I mean, sometime in your life you had one of those days that it was almost like the Midas touch. Everything you touched turned to gold. Have you had those days? Yeah. I mean, don't we live for those days? Yeah. I mean, those are the days we live for. But unfortunately, there's a thing called life, right? And then we have those days that aren't so great. Actually, what we might call a bad day. Anybody ever had those? Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're not so much fun. Well, I was having one of those days. And I don't like to admit it because I'm a pretty positive guy. And things just weren't going right. And I was, on the back of my yard looking at the Sandia Mountains. It was around this time of the year, crisp air. Beautiful, right? Blue sky, maybe about 65 degrees. And I was trying to enjoy my coffee and read my newspaper. But what happened was, I realized something a long time ago, that life is 10% what happens to you, but 90% how you react to it. So you might want to write that down. It's 10%, life is 10% what happens to you, but 90% how you react. And so what I learned is, if I could learn to respond rather than react, things would be different. So I was trying to respond on the back of my patio. But what you don't know is just a day later, I was talking to my dad in California. And we were talking about football. He's an avid sports fan, and we were talking about the games. And, at the end, I said, "Dad, I love you." And he said, "I love you too." And I hung up the phone. And 2 hours later, I got a call. My dad passed away. Just like that. That's a bad day. My mom died 2 years before that. So then, kid you not, October 31st, I'm not a big Halloween guy. In fact, I really don't like Halloween. So on top of that, 4 hours later, I get a knock at the door. And the strange guy, I have this camera on my front door that goes through my TV so I can see who it was. I'm like, I don't know this guy. Still kind of in the state of shock because of what I heard about my dad. I decided to open the door, and I said, "Yes." And he says, "Are you Tod Novak?" And I was like, "Yeah." I mean, I couldn't even talk, but yeah. He says, "Consider yourself served." Never been sued in my life. Consider yourself served. Okay, so close the door, try to regroup. Back to the backyard the next day trying to respond rather than react. So I'm reading my favorite paper, the USA Today. Anybody read that paper? Love that paper. You'll find out later why, because my personality type is, the eagle peacock. The eagle, gets you things real quick. It's just got the headlines. It's got pretty pictures, and it's in color, and so I like that. Versus the Wall Street Journal. I can look at the front page, and that's about it. Yeah. So I'm reading this story about a gentleman named Jeff Lewis. Anybody ever heard of Jeff Lewis? I never have either. But after you hear this story, you'll never forget him. So I'm reading this story, and Jeff Lewis was a 53-year-old school teacher from Arizona. Been teaching math for 29 years. Pretty successful guy. He was an athlete, played golf, bowled, ran marathons, engaged, getting ready to get married. And as I continued to read the story, one morning he woke up and he had a fever. And it was a raging fever. One of those fevers like, I better go to the hospital kind of fever. And so his fiance said, "You better go to the hospital." Thank God he did, because an hour after in the hospital, he went into a coma. Well, what happened was he had a common strep B virus infection. Now, for those of you here, if you ever get that common strep B virus, no big deal. Your body would fight it off. But Jeff Lewis had his spleen taken out 20 years ago in a shooting accident. So he couldn't fight it off. It began to spread to his hands and his feet. So the doctors told his fiance, she actually had the rights to make medical decisions, that we're going to have to amputate both his arms and both his legs above his knees. So they did it while he was in a coma. And they said, really, you should sign a DNR, do not resuscitate order, because quite honestly, when the guy wakes up, he's going to be so mentally depressed. He's just not going to make it. And she says, "You know what? You don't know my Jeff. I'm not doing it." The next day he wakes up. He thought somebody played a sick joke on him. He woke up, no arms, no legs. I mean, can you imagine how you'd feel? Can you imagine how I was feeling about what I thought was a bad day? My circumstances that I was kind of thinking, oh, this is horrible. It wasn't so bad after reading that story. And as I continued to read the story, what was amazing is 9 months later, he's back in school teaching, running marathons, bowled a 157, shot a 78 on the golf course, which is, I would love to shoot a 78 with my arms and legs. And you guess what his website's called? Don'tFeelSorryForMe.com. Don'tFeelSorryForMe.com. What an attitude. He also says that life is 10% what happens to you, 90% how you respond. And I just want to start off that way because so many people think they're having a bad day sometimes. Some of you might think, well, life's just not dishing out what it should. Trust me, you got it pretty good compared to Jeff Lewis. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes.
So I hope you remember that story because, sales is a mental game. If anyone tells you differently, they don't know what they're telling you about because it's a mental game. And so you got to have somebody like that you're going to rely on and think about and say, it's really not that bad. And you got to remember those good times. Everybody was excited when I said, hey, you guys ever had a great day? And everybody was smiling earlobe to earlobe. Ron Bell, 2 weeks ago, got $1 million check for selling his brand. Do you think he had a good day?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty good day. Pretty good day.